Hi students, welcome to this tutorial about connectors. Let's start by analyzing what conjunctions and connectors express. This is actually revising, okay? Conjunctions and connectors express similar meanings but follow different rules of grammar and punctuation. Of course, I am quite sure that you are already aware of what they express, yes? But this is a kind of revision. Now, what distinguishes connectors or conjunctions from other linking expressions? You know that other linking expressions can be relative pronoun, for instance. They link ordinary statements together in the same sentence, or prepositions or prepositional phrases that may link a noun or idea into the rest of the sentence. Verbs, which often link their subject with an object or complement. Do you have the answer? Well, what distinguishes conjunctions and connectors from each other is that they show a meaning between two verb-containing ideas. Now, what separates conjunctions and connectors from each other? Well, the answer is that what separates them is the grammatical status of the two linked ideas. Yes, conjunction ones are together in the same sentence, while connector ones are separate. Check these examples. Mount Kilimanjaro is on the equator, but it has a covering of snow. Here, but is linking, but in two different ways. First, it physically links the verb is and has into the same sentence. It also makes a mental link suggesting that what follows is surprising after the statement before. In number two, Mount Kilimanjaro is on the equator, nevertheless it has a covering of snow. The word nevertheless does only one kind of linking, which is the mental semantic kind of link. There is no physical linking in B, in sentence number 2, because the connector is in a new sentence. That is probably why some people call them logic connectors. They show only a meaning link. In sentence number 3, Mount Kilimanjaro is on the equator, but nevertheless it has a covering of snow. But here is doing the physical link, while the connector, nevertheless, is adding mental meaning to that of the conjunction to make it stronger. These kind of combinations are emphatic conjunctions, and they can only be made with a few conjunctions, with a few conjunction connector pairs. Yes. Connectors seem to be easy to be used, but there might be some problems. Let's start with on the contrary. On the contrary is one of the most frequently misused connectors. Part of the problem with it is that Spanish have a similar looking connector with a different meaning, which is al contrario. The wrong use of on the contrary is for contrasting or presenting a difference between two opposites. Now, the correct connector for this, that is to say, for contrasting or presenting a difference between two opposites, is on the other hand, or by contrast, if you want. Check the examples. Conjunctions join two verbs into one sentence. On the other hand, connectors keep them apart. In sentence number 2, global warming does not always mean warmer weather. On the contrary, it can lead to extremes of cold. There you have the explanation I have just delivered. And note the correct use of on the contrary is to clarify a negative statement. If you go back to the previous slide, which is this, pay attention to the presence of not. A negative form nearly always needs to be present before on the contrary. Now, which of the Which one would you use to fill in the blanks in these two sentences? It is not an idea around which the community can unite. Blank. I see it as one that will divide us. And number 2, I'd love to own a horse and go riding every day. Taking care of the animal is a very big responsibility. Which one would you use there? Well, the answer for number 1 is on the contrary, and for number 2 is on the other hand. I hope you have got the right answer. Let's see problem number 2 that has to do with the use of nevertheless and on the other hand. Now, both of these connectors relate to the conjunction but. However, they each expresses a different meaning. Let's compare the examples. Whales swim in the sea, but they are not fish. But here is expressing surprise. And B, whales swim in the sea, but elephants walk on land. As you can see here, but is expressing difference. Nevertheless, is used to express only surprise. So, but in sentence 1 could be replaced by the connector nevertheless, not in sentence B. Why? Because on the other hand shows only a difference. Yes? Now, which one would you use in this example? He didn't study for the exam, blank, he got good marks. And the answer is nevertheless. Let's see problem 3, which has to do with the use of as a result and therefore. We tend to think that as a result means the same as consequently or therefore. Why? Because they are used after causes and seem interchangeable in some contexts, such as the following. Most of South America was colonized by Spain. As a result, Spanish is the main language. In sentence B, Alexander the Great contracted malaria in Asia. As a result, he died. Keep in mind that logical consequences tend to be ideas rather than real-world events, so that it is ideas that are usually found after therefore. Yes, pay attention to these two sentences. Which of them, therefore or as a result, would you use in the blanks? I have long been interested in science and animals. I have decided to study biology in college, and in number 2, someone called in a bomb threat. School was evacuated. Which one will you use? Okay, the answer for number 1 is therefore, and the answer for number 2 is as a result. Now, what about the use of firstly, and at first? First is used at the beginning or for the beginning of a chronological process or procedure. Firstly, for the beginning of a non-chronological list, and at first to make a contrast with a single chronological event. Take a look at these sentences and try to decide which connector would you use in each blank. Okay, the answer for number 1 is first, because it is a chronological process, it is a procedure. In number 2, firstly. And finally, you have at first, yes, to make a contrast with a single chronological later event. And the problem with at last. The wrong use of at last is introducing the final part of a multi-sentence. In this context, the correct connectors would be lastly or finally. like in the example. The fourth main means of transport is trains. Finally, there are planes. Now, the correct use of at last is to suggest that the point following has been desired for a long time, which is, of course, which means or implies that its occurrence is a happy event. So the war lasted for 20 long years. At last, a peace treaty was signed. Now, in the end and eventually, also suggest a long wait for the event named after them. But they lack the suggestion of relief at the end of the wait, compared to at last, yes, which implies a happy event as result, yes. So can you think of examples to use finally, at last, in the ends, or eventually? Well, that's all for today, and I hope you have enjoyed